With the worldwide release of the new Demon Slayer movie, which gives us the first 45 minutes of the Swordsmith Village arc, you know, after you watch the last 3 episodes of the Entertainment District arc, but honestly not complaining considering the fact seeing Gyotaro's fight against Tengen and Tanjiro remastered into movie quality was an experience in its own, I figured that there's no better time than now to talk about the Swordsmith Village arc, as we currently exist in an awkward little time period between this movie's premiere and the releasal of the actual Swordsmith Village arc, which happens on April 9th. But since we're currently existing in this little lull, there's never been a better time to sit down and study up for Demon Slayer's biggest ever arc, at least so far as the anime goes. Every arc following this arc is gonna be
Demon Slayer's biggest ever arc,
because it's a very simple story. The arcs get more important the further you go. But the problem with the Swordsmith Village arc is that it's the first arc where we're not treated to our usual ensemble of characters. And this throws a lot of people off when they get to the Swordsmith Village arc. While we're usually used to the likes of Zenitsu, Inosuke, and Tanjiro battling out against demons that they bump into, the Swordsmith Village arc doesn't have Zenitsu or Inosuke, and instead they're replaced with Hashira, battling against the likes of some of the strongest demons in the Demon Slayer world. And while the manga of Demon Slayer kind of holds your hand while explaining the powers of these Hashira and upper rank demons, the anime kind of breezes through them nonchalantly. Now this is done for pacing reasons, and it's done gorgeously, but it can certainly leave a lot of people scratching their heads when they're trying to figure out rather complicated abilities, which is why today we're going to be making sure that you understand everything that you need to know when heading into the Swordsmith Village arc. That's right, today we're talking everything you need to know before watching Demon Slayer's Swordsmith Village arc. Today we're going to be talking about the abilities, backstories, and motivations of Hantengu, Gyoku, Moishiro, and Mitsuru, as understanding the powers, motivations, and emotions of all of these characters is paramount to fully enjoying the Swordsmith Village arc. But before I get to explaining powers, emotions, or motivations, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you want to hear my live reaction to the new Demon Slayer movie, go ahead and follow my brand new podcast that I'm doing with Danny Mata called Otaku's Anonymous, where we break down everything that happened in anime this week. Before we get into all that, guys, today I want to talk to you about a brand new sponsor to the page, Vessi. Listen, I'm not always tied to this chair. In fact, sometimes I'm even touching grass. But as a very naturally cautious person, I like to be prepared for all kinds of possibilities while I'm out touching grass. Specifically, I like to be prepared for rainy days because when it rains in Los Angeles, it rains. See, Vessi makes stylish 100% waterproof sneakers, and they want to introduce you to the Dry Socks Club. You see, Vessi shoes are made with a Dymatex material, a dual climate knit material that keeps you cool in the summers and warm in the winters. They are comfortable, lightweight, and incredibly breathable, and not to mention, one of my favorite looking shoes on the market. I mean, look at these bad boys. They're a perfect addition to any wardrobe. Ever since finding out Vessi exists, these have become basically the only sneakers I wear. As somebody who hates wet socks from either me sweating in them and making them wet or the outside making my socks wet through puddles or rain, Vessi has been an absolute game changer. Vessi shoes give me the peace of mind no matter what I'm out doing, be it being at the gym or the grocery store, that my socks are gonna stay dry all day long. And listen, I hear you. There's no way that a shoe this breathable and this fashionable is waterproof. You see this shoe right here? Well, this is a rainy day. And this rainy day isn't gonna ruin your day. You see how that water beads up on the front of the shoe there? Little shake, and you're clear. And you better believe that the inside of this shoe is still incredibly dry. So what are you guys waiting for? Use code WeebCommander at checkout today to get 15% off your order of Vessi shoes today. So what are you guys waiting for? Let's extinct wet socks. So, the Swordsmith Village arc, the third to last arc in Demon Slayer. Yeah, that's right, after this one we only have 2 more. That being said, the Infinity Castle arc is pretty long. Demon Slayer is a very short manga. Opens with Tanjiro bringing his Nichiren sword to the Swordsmith Village in order to have it repaired, specifically to his swordsmith, Hotaro. But as we know quite clearly, Hotaro is incredibly hot-tempered, and even more so when Tanjiro either damages or breaks his sword. And because of this, in the 2 months that Tanjiro was in a coma after the Entertainment District arc, instead of fixing Tanjiro's sword, which was badly chipped in his battle against Daki and Gyotaro, Hotaro just decided to write Tanjiro incredibly scary letters, which are actually significantly scarier in the manga than they are in the anime, as the letters that Hotaro writes for Tanjiro are actually censored in the anime. However, Tanjiro, upon arriving to the Swordsmith village can't find Hotaro anywhere. In fact, nobody can find him anywhere. And thus Tanjiro has to wait around and recover his stamina because he lost all of it due to the 2-month coma. And while this leads to incredible moments like Mitsuri's bath scene, which by the way made the price of the ticket to see the movie worth it, it also leads to things that are a lot worse than Mitsuri's bath scene. You see, through an information leak, Muzan has found the location of the Swordsmith village. And as Muzan is trying to wipe out all demon slayers, if he wipes out the places where they can get the swords that can kill demons, well then that's a pretty good blow to the demon slayer corps. So Muzan sends his upper rank 4 and 5 demons, Hantengu and Gyoko, to the Swordsmith village to destroy it. However, what Muzan doesn't know is that there's currently 2 hashira residing in the Swordsmith village, on top of Tanjiro, which leads these 2 hashira and these 2 demons to come into combat with the Swordsmith village as their battlefield. And there's also a significantly lesser known demon slayer in the Swordsmith village known as Genya, who is Tsunemi's little brother. So since we're talking about demon slayers, let's talk about the demon slayers that participate in this arc. I obviously don't have to give you a synopsis on Tanjiro. You know him, you understand him, you love him. So let's talk about the 3 demon slayers that are involved in the Swordsmith village arc that aren't Tanjiro. And we'll go in rankings of power from weakest to strongest, starting with Genya. Genya, as I previously stated, is the little brother of the Wind Hashira Tsunemi. Genya isn't nearly as talented as Tsunemi, but then again, almost nobody on Earth is as talented as Tsunemi. But what Genya lacks in talent, he makes up for in gumption. See, Genya and Tsunemi belong to a family of 7 children, and Genya and Tsunemi's family was not great, if you couldn't guess. What, those 2 well-adjusted adults didn't come from a loving family? Genya and Tsunemi's mother was incredibly hardworking, and because she was so hardworking to keep her 7 children alive, she never got to sleep. However, Genya and Tsunemi's father only ever lifted a hand when it was to hit his own children. Fortunately, everybody that knew Tsunemi and Genya's family hated his dad. So one day, his dad got stabbed to death by an unknown assailant, at which point Genya and Tsunemi vowed to protect all of their brothers and sisters and their mother. And they didn't really do so good at that. You see, one day, Genya, Tsunemi, and their 5 siblings were waiting around for their mother. However, their mother was late from coming back from work, which she never was. So Genya and Tsunemi worried about their mother, tried to put the rest of their siblings to bed so they could go out and look for their mother. However, at this point, they heard a knock at their door. Hoping that it was their mother, 4 of Tsunemi and Genya's siblings ran to the door to open it. And that's when the door and their siblings got cut in half. And Genya was also cut by this, receiving the scar he has to this day on his face. Dazed and confused, Genya tried to apply pressure to the wound on his face to stop the bleeding, while Tsunemi tackled the assailant that just killed 4 of his siblings out their window. As Genya stumbled outside looking for a doctor to heal his face, and his siblings came upon the scene of Tsunemi standing over their dead mother with a knife. At which point he started to yell at Tsunemi, calling him a murderer, and he cradled his mother's body. However, as he cradled her body and the sun began to rise, her body turned into ash. Dazed, confused, and losing blood from the entire situation, Genya separated himself from Tsunemi. Tsunemi, understanding that his mother had been turned into a demon and came back and killed her family, decided to join the Demon Slayer Corps to make sure that something like this would never happen again. However, it took Genya a couple of years to process what had happened. And in order to regain a connection with his brother, who he had labeled as a murderer for simply protecting his life, Genya joins the Demon Slayer Corps. However, Genya has no ability whatsoever to use breathing techniques, but that doesn't mean that he's defenseless against the likes of demons. In fact, by the end of the manga, he's one of the strongest demon slayers out there. But how is somebody with absolutely no breathing techniques one of the strongest demon slayers out there? 2 things. 1, Genya has the ability to eat demons. Not like whole, but Genya, possibly because his mother cut him and got demon blood into his blood, has the ability to consume demons and gain demon-like abilities. And what's wild is it doesn't even take that much of a demon for Genya to get these abilities. We've seen him eat hair, little pieces of flesh. He doesn't need a whole arm. And the stronger the demon that Genya consumes, the stronger the abilities he gets, making him a lot like Nezuko, a demon fighting for the Demon Slayers. The second ability is gun. Genya is kind of the prime example that the Demon Slayer Corps really don't have to kill all demons. Demon Slayer takes place in like the 1910s. Well, anywhere from the 1890s to the 1910s, which means guns are very much a thing that exist. And Genya has a Nichiren sawn-off shotgun. That is to say that he fills shotgun shells with Nichiren iron and then just blows demons away. And this works very well, like fighting on par with 12 Kiseki well. So for being entirely real, even if the Demon Slayer Corps didn't kill all the demons, in the next 40 or 50 years, you get a submachine gun filled with Nichiren bullets, it was over anyway. And that's Genya. Honestly, I could have put him higher considering what he's capable of doing by the end of the manga, but we're gonna go Swordsmith Village arc power levels. Next up in the Demon Slayer category, we have Mitsuri. Mitsuri also came from a large family, though not as large as Genya's, only having 5 siblings. But Mitsuri's childhood was very different from Genya's. I mean, sure, Genya, Tsunemi, and Mitsuri all became Demon Slayers, but the reason that Mitsuri became a Demon Slayer is a lot different. See, Mitsuri was born strong, and I don't mean like CrossFitter strong. See, Mitsuri's mother was actually known all across her town for superhuman strength, at least so far as it went for a woman. But Mitsuri wasn't just strong for a Meiji period woman, Mitsuri was just superhumanly strong, period. As basically an infant, Mitsuri began to lift rocks roughly the size of her own body above her head. And more than that, she began to eat way more than any other baby would ever even think to consume. It's said that as an infant, Mitsuri consumed as much food as 3 full-grown men. And on top of this, Mitsuri's hair color began to turn pink because, and I shit you not, this is the actual explanation in the manga, she ate too much strawberry mochi. And now, because of her pink and green hair, Mitsuri was kind of labeled a freak, which meant at the age of 17, when Mitsuri was supposed to be married off, she simply could not be. Mitsuri, dismayed by the situation, decided to start dyeing her hair black, pretending to be weak and eating as much as a regular girl would. Now, was this almost killing her? Absolutely. But she was approached by a potential partner. But after an undisclosed amount of time of lying about who she really was, they broke up. It's at this point that Mitsuri bumped into the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps, Ubiyashiki, who told her that her strength was a gift and that she should embrace who she is. And because of this, she decided to join the Demon Slayer Corps, quickly rising to the level of hashira. And as Mitsuri continued on in her role as a Demon Slayer, she fell in love with the idea of finding somebody in the Demon Slayer Corps stronger than her. Because as she had now embraced her strength, she wanted to marry somebody who was stronger than her. This is a problem though, because there's only about 6 or 7 people in the entirety of the Demon Slayer Corps who are stronger than her, leaving her options for marriage very slim. But Mitsuri breaking out of normalcy and forging her own path really doesn't just stop with her joining the Demon Slayer Corps. See, long before Mitsuri was ever a hashira, she trained under Rengoku. We learned this in Rengoku's manga. She trained under Rengoku because she was trying to learn fire breathing. But for some reason, even though Mitsuri is technically as strong as 3 full-grown sumo wrestlers in one body, flame breathing wasn't working for her. And thus, throughout the duration of Rengoku's manga, Mitsuri begins to forge out on her own, making a split-second decision to abandon flame breathing and create her own breathing style. Love breathing. See, the reason that flame breathing didn't work for Mitsuri is because it is a very rigid style, as the majority of flame breathing is built around kendo, which is an ancient Japanese martial art that relies on over-the-head strikes. So flame breathing didn't use Mitsuri's best attributes, which are her superhuman strength and her superhuman flexibility. However, love breathing does. See, once Mitsuri broke out of the rigidness of flame breathing and started to use her love breathing, her ability shot to hashira level like that, as love breathing relies on both Mitsuri's flexibility and her whip-like Nichiren blade, as Mitsuri is able to, using her superhuman strength and flexibility, to cover a range of attacks with her whip-like Nichiren blade that a normal katana and breathing style simply could not do, making love breathing both incredibly apt offensively and defensively, as Mitsuri is able to, using her flexibility, attack behind her, in front of her, on top of her, below her, at a massive range. In fact, the closest parallel to her fighting style is used by Muzan, who generates whip-like appendages from his body to give himself defensive cover and make sure that anybody who tries to get close to him gets sliced into 1,000 tiny bits. The same very much goes for Mitsuri, who have shown strength feats like ripping demons' arms off, just bare hand ripping demons' arms off. And these weren't just nobody demons, these are upper moon demons. And while Mitsuri is technically the slowest runner out of all of the hashira, it's stated that her techniques and her attacks are faster than Tengen's, who is ironically the fastest runner out of all the hashira. Not to mention that she has dodged lightning and sound wave attacks. She's awesome. There's a reason she's a lot of people's favorite hashira. But let's get to the last hashira we have on this list, Moishiro Tokito, who is, fun fact, the youngest hashira maybe ever. Moishiro is the same age as Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke. He's 14, but that doesn't stop him from being one of the strongest hashira, if not characters, in the entirety of Demon Slayer. Moishiro, ironically, was born in a very similar circumstance to Tanjiro, as he was born into a wood-cutting family. Moishiro was born with an older twin brother, and unfortunately, Moishiro's story shares a lot more similarities with Tanjiro's story than just their parents liking to cut wood. As at the age of 10, Moishiro's mother caught a cold that eventually turned into bronchitis that eventually killed her. However, before Moishiro's mother died, his father went off to go get medicinal herbs for his sick wife. And while going to get those herbs, he falls off a cliff and dies. At least you get the save money on the funeral. 2-for-1 deal. Which left both Moshiro and Yoshiro, his twin brother. Yeah, you think you get twins mixed up a lot? How about we just have them have the same name, put one letter off? Have fun telling them apart now! Why do people do that? Why does that happen? If I ever have twins, their names are gonna be Zeke and Levi, because that would be funny. Russell and Bob, as long as they're not close to each other, name-wise. I think Bob is gonna be upset about his name, but I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. And Moshiro and Yoshiro survived alone as orphans for a little bit, until the wife of Kaguya, the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps, Amane, came to the twins to recruit them into the Demon Slayer Corps. Now, Moshiro wanted to join the Demon Slayer Corps, but Yoshiro didn't, as Yoshiro blamed the hardworking demeanor of both of his parents on the reason that they died, and thus Yoshiro dedicated himself to living a life of pacificity, making sure to never work too hard, because working too hard kills you. There's a lesson in there. However, Amane didn't give up. She kept going back to Moshiro and Yoshiro to try to convince them to join the Demon Slayer Corps, but Yoshiro keeps scurrying them away. That is until Moshiro and Yoshiro turn 11, and it's at this point that Moshiro and Yoshiro's story gets even closer to that of Tanjiro, because at the age of 11, a demon shows up at their house. Now, Moshiro and Yoshiro try to battle against this demon. However, considering the fact that neither of them were demon slayers, thanks Yoshiro, Yoshiro tries to fight the demon back, but ends up losing his left arm, at which point Moshiro, in a rage, destroys the demon using the tools around their house, and spends the rest of the day with his brother as he slowly expires from blood loss. Only you knew breathing techniques, Yoshiro. A little bit later in the day, Amane returns to Moshiro's house and heals him. However, the stress and trauma of going through this experience with demons causes Moshiro to lose all of his memories, which leads him to ironically adopt the personality of his brother, Yoshiro, becoming aloof to everything around him. However, aloofness doesn't mean that Moshiro wasn't incredibly powerful, as Moshiro was able to become a hashira in 2 months, which means technically he was a hashira at 11. And even though Moshiro had forgotten all of his memories, he still has a deep-seated hatred for demons, which is possibly why Moshiro trained so hard in his mist breathing. You see, mist breathing relies on Moshiro being sneaky, sort of. You see, as breathing styles don't generate the things that they're based off, I know, I'm as upset about it as you are. Mist breathing isn't about generating actual mist, it's about obscuring your movements, which is why Moshiro wears incredibly baggy clothes. See, Moshiro purposely wears incredibly baggy clothes to make his movements hard to read. On top of that, mist breathing is about obscuring the vision of the person you're fighting against, making your movement speed inconsistent, using a myriad of sword slashes to cover the eyes of your opponent. But this is just what mist breathing as a whole is about. But Moshiro was actually so practiced in mist breathing that he created his own technique. And this is mist breathing's 7th form, obscuring clouds. A technique where Moshiro drastically changes the tempo of his movement to disorient his opponent. A technique where Moshiro jets around his opponent, and when he's seen, he appears to be moving very slow, but as he goes to hide, he moves very quickly. This technique makes Moshiro's opponent feel as though he's dashing through mist. But Moshiro's mist breathing isn't his only strength, as Moshiro has shown speed feats like moving so fast that Tanjiro isn't able to keep up with his movements, as well as being able to speed blitz people who can literally teleport. Not to mention that Moshiro's ever-present rage allows him to cut through objects that are said to be stronger than diamonds. So yeah, he's kind of that guy. But enough about the Demon Slayers, let's talk about the demons, of which we got 2. And we're gonna do the same thing that we did with the Demon Slayers for the demons and go from weak to strong. Which means first up, we have Gyoko, upper rank number 5. Now, Gyoko is probably the ugliest, if not second ugliest demon. He has mouths where his eyes should be and eyes where his mouths should be. It's not great. And Gyoko's life was also not great. See, Gyoko, or Managi as he used to be known when he was human, was born in a fishing village at the edge of a coastline. And Managi's parents were fishers, and one day they went out for a fishing trip and never came back, which is better than the excuse I got from my dad. Except unlike my dad, one day Managi's parents' bodies washed up on shore, and Managi had like a supernatural and well-adjusted reaction to seeing his mangled, bloated parents' corpses. He decided that after seeing these corpses that he had a fascination with corpses, not stopping drowning deaths or making fishing safer. Nope, corpses. Which meant that Managi would get very excited by every corpse he ran into, which were usually just fish carcasses, but still, not a great look. And if there was a child in your town who seemed weirdly obsessed with fish carcasses, you probably wouldn't hang out with him. And believe it or not, that's exactly what happened. Managi was pretty much instantaneously ostracized from his own village, as everyone had believed that Managi had gone insane. But kids love to be mean, so one day a child from the village went up to Managi, who was obsessing over a fish carcass, and was like, "Hey, you're a weird guy. And for all intents and purposes, he was absolutely correct, but who knows? One day, Managi could have grown up to be a coroner or something. But that stopped the second that the child started making fun of him, because this made Managi very angry and he killed the kid. At which point, Managi, wanting to keep the body, stuffed it into a barrel used for fishing. However, apparently this pot wasn't sealed or hidden well enough, because this child's parents found his body in the pot and stabbed Managi with a fishing spear. And for 12 hours, Managi laid there with a spear in his stomach, waiting to die, until eventually Muzan stumbled upon his corpse and was like, you seem evil, and turned him into a demon. Managi then decided to take the name of Gyoko as a demon, and because of his near-death experience, had a hatred for all living things. And since Managi had died because he killed the child, Gyoko pretty much only eats children. But Gyoko now has the ability to atomically manipulate himself, and his obsession with fish started to show as he modified his body to look more like a fish. But Gyoko also had a different obsession: corpses. So Gyoko, outside of kidnapping and eating children, also took people's bodies that he was able to teleport away from wherever they were using his pots, which we'll cover in a second. And Gyoko would take the bodies of these people who he had kidnapped, stuff them in the pots, and turn them into living art. Horribly mangled and very much in pain living art. But how is Gyoko able to do this, you ask? Well, in order to explain that, we have to explain how his powers work. See, Gyoko is a fish, kind of, which means he doesn't have legs, which is where Gyoko's blood demon art comes in. Now, Gyoko's blood demon art is called porcelain vases, which allows Gyoko to create porcelain vases anywhere he wants to. Now, I know this ability sounds stupid, but this is also the only way that Gyoko is able to move, as Gyoko could simply point behind me on the shelf where Luffy is, create a vase there, and then teleport to that vase. See, Gyoko is able to freely and instantaneously teleport between all of his vases or pots, which makes him one of the faster upper ranked demons, because he can teleport. On top of this, Gyoko can trap things inside of his pots, kind of like he did with the child that he murdered. And Gyoko can stuff whatever he wants in any pot. As if, hypothetically, Gyoko's trying to stuff a body into a pot about the size of my 1-gallon water bottle here, he would simply compress my body until it fit in the pot. But that's not where the pain ends for me, because Gyoko is also god of the domain of pots. Anything shoved in a pot, Gyoko has full control over, which is how Gyoko makes his living art. See, Gyoko can stuff 3 or 4 people in the same pot and then fuse them together into his living art. On top of this, Gyoko has the ability to create giant fish monsters. Now, these fish monsters have a pot on top of them. The only way to kill these giant fish monsters is to destroy the pot on top of them. And these giant fish monsters are able to wipe out entire villages with relative ease, as some of them have giant teeth, as some of them can shoot out poison darts. And while you think you can kill them with a regular sword, the only way to destroy them is to destroy the pot on top of their back, which is kind of non-intuitive. And on top of all of that, like any good anime bad guy, Gyoko is also able to summon tentacles from his pot, which he can use to restrain or kill enemies under the sheer pressure of the tentacles squeezing. And while I would love to talk about tentacle bondage all day long, we have another demon we need to talk about still, and that's the number 4 upper ranked demon, Hantengu. You see, Hantengu, just like Gyoko, also not a great human. Hantengu was a notorious criminal. He stole from and then subsequently murdered people all across the country. However, Hantengu claimed innocence in all of these crimes, saying that his hands had made him do them. However, my hands made me do it isn't exactly a sound legal defense, which was unfortunate for Hantengu because one day he got caught. And when he was caught, he was sentenced to death by decapitation. However, while he was in prison and awaiting decapitation, he was approached by Muzan, who offered to help him by making him a demon. And the first thing that Hantengu did as a demon was break out of prison and kill the magistrate who assigned him the death penalty. It's not exactly Akaza's backstory, but then again, Hantengu's not exactly Akaza. Hantengu's abilities are a bit complicated, but nothing too serious. See, Hantengu has an ability known as emotion manifestation. An ability Hantengu has to manifest clones of himself that are amalgamations of the emotions he feels. See, Hantengu, just as a demon, has a couple of small-time abilities. See, Hantengu, before he splits into his clones, is one of the most skillfully adept people in stealth in the entire Demon Slayer universe, as he is able to almost effortlessly sneak into the Swordsmith village. On top of that, Hantengu, while in his Hantengu form, was able to sneak into the room of Tanjiro and Moishiro with neither of them noticed. But the thing is, Hantengu getting close to you isn't really the end of the world, because Hantengu in his Hantengu form isn't that strong. Well, that's not true. He's still very strong, he's just not as strong as he could be. See, Hantengu in his Hantengu form is one of the most durable people in all of Demon Slayer. So strong that Genya's Nichiren bullets bounce off of him. And what's worse, when Genya swung his sword at Hantengu's neck, it snapped. Not to mention, in this form, he's incredibly quick, being able to dodge Moishiro's misbreathing. And in this form, he also has the ability to alter his own size, being able to make himself smaller, and as he gets smaller, he gets faster. But Hontengu's true abilities come after you cut his head off, as after you cut off Hontengu's head, that head turns into a clone, and his body turns into a clone. After you decapitate these two clones, once again, that duplication occurs, leaving Hontengu with 4 clones. Now, each of these individual clones have their own abilities and blood demon arts, on top of having their own personalities, as each of these individual clones is a manifestation of one of Hontengu's emotions, with Sekido, the first clone, being the manifestation of Hontengu's anger, Karaku being the manifestation of Hontengu's relaxation, Aizetsu being the manifestation of sorrow, Urogi being the manifestation of joy, Zohakuten being the manifestation of his anger, again, it's kind of confusing, we'll get to it in a second, and Urami, one of his lesser clones, being a manifestation of his resentment. So the reason that I say Hontengu has 4 clones is because the first 4 clones that I mentioned are his 4 primary clones. Also, Hakuten is the combination of those 4 primary clones, and Urami is a lesser clone. So let's get to talking about those clones, what their abilities are, what their blood demon arts are, and we'll start with Sekido. Now, all of these clones have the ability to manipulate their flesh, like any demon, and they're all incredibly fast and incredibly strong, but none of them have the abilities of Hontengu, the size alteration or the durability, as Genya's bullets are able to pierce through these clones. Sekido really has 2 abilities. One, he has his blood demon art, electrokinesis, which allows him to generate and manipulate lightning, and this lightning has a massively wide-reaching area of effect, causing those who are hit by it to instantly lose consciousness or be paralyzed. On top of this, Sekido also has the ability biological absorption, which allows him to absorb the other clones to create Zohakuten. After this, we have Karaku. Karaku has all of the abilities of a standard demon: insane stamina, insane recovery, flesh manipulation. However, Karaku uses his flesh manipulation to create a giant Uchiwa, which is basically just a giant fan that he uses to funnel his blood demon art, Aerokinesis, as Karaku's blood demon art allows him to generate and manipulate wind. Now, these wind gusts that Karaku generates are able to level entire buildings, leave giant craters, blow Moshiro away. But outside of this, Karaku is also shown to be probably the physically strongest out of all of the clones, being able to kick through and rip off the arms of incredibly durable demons. And Karaku's a whole lot cooler than the 3rd clone on this list, Aizetsu. See, Aizetsu doesn't have electrokinesis or aerokinesis. Aizetsu has the ability to manipulate a spear, also known as spear projection. See, Aizetsu uses his flesh manipulation to create a flesh Yari, which is a spear, and Aizetsu uses his blood demon art, which is spear projection, to increase the range of this spear so that those who believe that they've dodged his Yari actually still end up impaled. It's fine, it works, I guess. Not lightning release or a Toneri fan, but it's fine, it gets the job done. And last of the 4 main clones is Urogi. You see, Urogi is a bird? As to how that's a manifestation of joy, I don't know, I guess I wouldn't mind flying. See, Urogi has avian physiology, meaning that Urogi has wings and giant talons on his feet, which allows Urogi to fly around at incredible speeds with talons that can cut through apparently diamonds. And in sticking with the avian physiology thing to a small degree, I guess, Urogi's blood demon art is Sonic Scream. Birds don't have sonic screams. Why do sonic scream characters always fly? But Urogi, with the power of this blood demon art, is able to let loose blood-curdling sonic screams. Sonic screams so powerful that they make those who hear it bleed from the eyes and the ears. And then lastly, we have Zohakuten, which is what happens when Sekido absorbs the other 3 clones. Zohakuten has all the abilities of the 4 clones, on top of having a new ability, wood manipulation, which allows Zohakuten to control and manipulate the wood and flora around him, which Zohakuten usually uses to create a 5-headed dragon to attack his enemies. And on top of being able to use all the abilities of the 4 clones, Zohakuten is also able to combine their abilities, as this 5-headed wooden dragon is able to release lightning strikes and sonic screams and gusts of wind. And yeah, that's probably everything you need to know about Hontengu without any spoilers, and probably everything you need to know about the Swordsmith Village arc with next to no spoilers. I feel like I did a pretty good job not spoiling things. But you guys tell me, do you guys feel as though you're prepared for the Swordsmith Village arc? Did I miss anything? Are you excited for the Swordsmith Village arc? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. God, I'm so excited that Demon Slayer is back. I'm going to farm this show for content.